Hi, everyone. We are here to do a COVID-19 roundtable community response. So this is a roundtable talking to different communities from around the state and organizers in those communities, parents, teachers, and also Mari Cordes will be joining us for an update, a legislative update, so you can hear what's happening around the communities, give us some feedback and ask questions about what you feel like needs to be happening. And we're also going to share resources with you throughout. So I'm Brenda Siegel. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, and I also have started a statewide mutual aid response that I started the day after, right away, the day after we had suspended all in-person campaign activity. And so I am going to introduce you to our panelists. We have Ashley Andrews, and she is from Windsor County in Hartford area, but she can't see her waving, so unmute and say hello, Ashley. You have to unmute.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley.
And we have Jubilee McGill, who's in Addison County, and she started the Addison County Mutual Aid and is also a activist and community organizer. And she can say hi now.
Hey, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
We have Tanya Vyhovsky, who is running for state rep in Chittenden 8-1, and also it has started the Essex Mutual Aid, and she's here to talk to you about that.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here with you.
And we have Teddy Waszazak, who is a Barre City councilor, and he is here to talk to you about what is happening in Barre City.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
And later on, we will have, like I said, Representative Mari Cordes, who will come in and give us a legislative update and some resources. And we will also have Katy Edmund, who will come in, and she's a high school teacher, and she will come in and give us and a mother of small children. And so she will come in and both give us some of her experience of teaching from home, and also she's been doing these live videos with homeschooling tips and things she's trying, and they've been so excellent and so useful that I don't have small children and I've still been watching them. So that has been excellent. So I'm really excited to hear from all of you also. So here's how it works. You can use the chat box whenever you want. It's down in the bottom. You can press it and you can make comments and ask questions, and or you can just ask a question. And Carrie Barber, who's from Progressive Insider, who is producing this onto our Facebook page, is going to queue up questions when we're ready to take them, and she will unmute you when you're ready to ask questions. If you're watching from Facebook Live, then Jacob Elpern, who I don't know if he's on here, if we can see him. Jacob, are you on here? I don't know if he's on here, but Jacob, who's my field director for our campaign, is monitoring Facebook, and he will come in and answer and ask questions that are coming up on Facebook as well. He's here but not on video. We ask as many people as can to join in and actually register, because that will make for a smoother process with the questions being asked in a more streamlined way. And also we want to see your faces as we too are all isolated. So please do join us, and I'm ready to get started. So we're gonna start with, I think, Jubilee talking about her. Well, actually, I'll start with mine. So like I said, the day after we suspended our in-person campaign activity, we started a statewide mutual aid response. Jacob is going to add that into our chat box right now, and then you'll see how you can get to it. And what it has is a need form. This is I'm in need, I need help, I need support, and a volunteer form. We have a very streamlined process for the way that we operate. We have a spreadsheet that reaches across the whole state, town by town, of volunteers that have signed up. And every morning we take a look at the who signed up for need, and we connect an individual with a single volunteer with their permission. So we talk to both the volunteer and the individual, and we ask for permission to share contact with one another. And in addition, we share with the volunteer best practices to keep people safe. We also have added to that recently that we are asking people to do, if possible, one run in 14 days. So not volunteer for multiple people and do multiple runs, but one run in 14 days so that they can make sure that they aren't going from place to place and spreading COVID-19 along the way. In addition, we ask people to wipe down anything that is a hard surface that they have touched that they're dropping off, to not go in people's houses, to drop the stuff on a porch or a door front and knock once, and again, have wiped it off. If you have plastic gloves, to use them and change them as you're changing surfaces. And again, to only go once within those 14 days. In addition, we're asking people, we're also connecting one person with one volunteer unless that volunteer gets sick or needs to opt out. We also are requesting that nobody go out if they even have as much of a sniffle, a tiny little fever, a sore throat, any kind of illness at all, that they do not volunteer. And if you're an essential worker, which means that you have been exposed to lots of people, that you also aren't the one doing those runs, because that is a best if you don't do that. So that's how we operate our mutual aid. And as right now, we've had less need because we're just at the beginning. But as we continue, we plan on, we have several people lined up to coordinate these activities the same way as we go forward. We also make sure that both volunteer and the person in need is aware that we only are connecting them. We don't have a vetting, we aren't able to vet people or everybody, especially in a crisis situation. And so people should be well aware of that when they either accept need or they go to someone who's in need's house. That's extremely important. So I'm really excited about what we've been doing, really sad that we have to be doing it. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about, I'm also homeschooling an 18-year-old, and the balance of figuring out, it's a senior year in high school. It's been a little bit sad for the end of the senior year to be over abruptly. And it's been a little bit sad, hard to figure out how much I let him mourn that and how much I make sure that I don't let it totally take him down. So making sure that we continue having a routine, that I'm checking on his homework. And I have my own personal work with the dance festival, and I also have the campaign and other organizing efforts that I'm doing at the same time. So like all other parents, I'm juggling a lot. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that when Katy comes on. So that's our statewide mutual aid. And in addition to that, we are offering on the campaign website, we've sort of taken a space almost every day of the week to offer some kind of respite activity, something fun that gets your mind off of it, that is not news, that is not campaigning, that is just enjoyable. So we did a movie last Friday. On tomorrow, Ajna, actually, my son, is teaching everyone how to make egg tacos and homemade French fries. So if you go to our website, you can get the ingredients for how to do that, sign up, and we're going to do that on Facebook Live. We're going to be doing American Sign Language classes and a song swap and children's music hour, and just a lot of fun activities to just take a little break from this. And then we also have a coffee and a tea throughout the week where you can join and just have conversation, both to get to know each other better and all of that. So I'm going to go now to Jubilee.
Hey everyone, my name is Jubilee McGill. I live in Bridport, Vermont, which is in Addison County. I've worked in housing equity for a number of years. I worked for our county housing trust for quite a while, and now I work for a local shelter that provides emergency shelter, but we also do ongoing service coordination for people as they leave us to kind of set them up for life. And then I'm also an organizer with Rights and Democracy Vermont. So in this crisis, it's really kind of like both my worlds have collided into one mission. And Rights and Democracy has allowed us to use our normal staff time and to devote our work plans to helping and making sure mutual aid projects are happening and that our communities are taken care of during this crisis. So last weekend, it feels like forever ago, but it was only a week ago, I put together the Addison County Mutual Aid website. I got a lot of guidance from Rutland County for actually creating the site and the Google Forms. It works on a model where people go to the website and they can click on the form where asking for help if they have needs that they need help meeting, or they can click on the I Can Help tab if they've got some way that they can offer help. And I've kind of been, when I talk to people about it, I try and play up that you can be both at once. I think in this crisis, we're all going to have new needs that emerge, but I think we also have ways that we can help. So I encourage people to fill out both as they feel led. And then we built a whole mass of volunteers. We have at least one point person in each town, especially in some of our bigger towns. We have more than one, and they are each monitoring the needs as they come in and kind of taking the lead on that. And then it's just kind of evolved from there. Helena, who is the executive director of United Way, is listening in on the call, and she and I have been working together to ensure that we're not kind of competing for resources within our community, and that we're kind of having a coordinated effort that makes sure that nobody falls through the cracks. A lot of social services, there's limits, and the limits don't generally meet the need, but I think those limits the needs are gonna far exceed those limits. So we've been working together with some plans. We're kind of finalizing a lot of details, but we just have a really great coordinated effort that's going on in our community. And then I also, in my work with the homeless, there's some really great things happening there. We've gotten most of the homeless people in our county into hotel rooms, and we've coordinated meal deliveries. We've been working with the college and other groups that are willing to make community meals to go. And then we have volunteers who are running them. Now we're working on a coordinated laundry effort. But what's really nice about this is we've been able to take some of the volunteers that we found through the website and kind of put them to this work. And as the needs get greater and greater, I think we're going to be able to do a lot more of this, and working with United Way to really, I think we're going to be saving lives. And so I am happy to help in whatever way you want. You can reach out to me if you have questions. It's Jubilee, Jubilee, at radvt.org. And I am happy to help in whatever way I can to make sure you've got these kind of things available in your community.
Thanks so much, Jubilee. And just so folks know, there will be a discussion in a little while, and I see some questions coming up, and we will have questions coming up in a little while as well. And then I want to bring it over to Tanya Vyhovsky, who her mutual aid kind of popped up right at the same time as the statewide mutual aid did. It doesn't surprise me, we're on exactly the same page at exactly the same time, but we absolutely were, and so she has also been doing it with longevity is a loose term right now, but it feels like Jubilee said, it does feel like forever that we've been doing this. So here is Tanya.
Hi, so I am working in Essex, which is my community. I am a Essex High School graduate and have been lucky enough to be able to afford being back in Essex for about 6 years now. And I'm a social worker by trade. I have a small private practice here in Essex, and I also work as a school social worker, and I'm a longtime activist and community organizer. So again, much like Jubilee, it felt like many of the worlds that I run in sort of collided as this came together, and I saw a need to bring our community together. If, you know, we're going to get through this, we are always stronger together. We've shown that time and time again. And so that's really what brought me to the table, was making sure that our community came together and supported each other. And while it's frustrating to me that people in positions of leadership that should be doing this work aren't, I do know that we can do much better as we come together in their absence. And so I really, in a really grassroots way, threw together a document, the Essex Mutual Aid volunteer form, and people can, it's a Google form, people can fill it out there and sign up to be a volunteer. And I, much like Brenda, am working, Essex is a pretty big community. We've got about 24,000 people, so we're pretty large. And knowing that this organizing isn't happening in some of the smaller towns around us, I've incorporated those towns of Jericho and Richmond and Underhill as well. Really, I haven't turned people away if they don't have an organizer in their community that I'm aware of. So I know that I also have some people from Colchester and some people from Milton, and would encourage people in those communities, if they want to do this, to reach out so that I can support you to organize within your own community. And in the meantime, I'm certainly happy to continue making those connections. And so what I've really tried to do is connect people. Again, we're a pretty large community. And so I've tried to connect people within neighborhoods. So I have information about where people are, and I'm trying to connect neighbors to neighbors, because that's really what this is about. This is about all of us coming together and standing up for and ensuring that our neighbors are okay, whether we know them or we don't know them. And this really spreads across so many things that we often look of as differences. We are so much more alike than we are different. And I'm seeing people step up who would normally not even talk to each other and who normally wouldn't share the same opinions, and that has disappeared. And so I've been given a lot of hope finding this, the care in my community to care for one another. Much like everyone else has already said, right now we have a lot more volunteers than we do needs, but that's a great place to be. We had the great gift of time to prepare for this, which we don't often have when it comes to an emergency. And so I feel like prepared is the way to be. We also have forms for people to sign up if they are being asked to stay in their home or they feel safest in their home. We have a quarantine delivery form, and that form is really simply just for someone who needs something delivered to their home that they cannot go out and get. I have another form that is for a larger swath of needs. I anticipated a lot of delivery need, and so I separated that out, and you can access delivery from either form, but I did one that was just for delivery, and then the larger needs requests. And we have really tried to partner someone who's in the same neighborhood and with one delivery. So it's one volunteer to one person asking, again, similarly, to try to limit any infection spread. We're asking people to leave things on doorsteps when possible and not actually have human contact. I think one of the greatest things we did really early on that just gave me so much hope for our community was we found out that our Jericho food shelf couldn't access bread, that their normal bread delivery was shut down. And we organized, actually, we were asked to see if we could find bread, bake bread, create bread, and across this community came together and baked over 50 loaves of bread for the Jericho food shelf to make sure that they had bread to go out in their Saturday delivery. And again, we set up a drop box, so things got dropped in the drop box and then stayed there until they made it for one delivery. But just, I'm really amazed with the way people are coming together in the face of this really scary time. And we're also managing our Essex Mutual Aid Facebook page. That's where we're doing a lot of our organizing and trying to get information out there, trying to make sure there's tabs so people can access resources and people can really plug in any way that they want. We've also coordinated with our local government and our county-wide government to get announcements out in on Front Porch Forum and in our newspaper, and we are working with the school board to help support them to have volunteers to deliver meals to students who are out of school. So this really is a community effort coming together to make sure that we're all okay. And in the absence of leadership from some of the people who are supposed to be doing this work, I'm thankful to have a community that cares about one another.
Yeah, I think that we often really praise, I hear a lot from this administration really praising how our communities come together. And I second that, in that during Tropical Storm Irene, I was in a lot of need, and I lost everything, and our communities came together this same way. But we don't need a society where that's what happens. We need a society where the system's already in place, so that if there is a disaster, because disasters happen, 2011 was the flood, this is not that long from now, that there's another major disaster, and this one's impacting all of us. We need systems in place like paid family medical leave, which was not signed by the governor, which was vetoed in 2018, and that bill had medical leave in it that would have supported us right now. And so I would second that I'm really in awe of how many people are coming together and how excited people are to do that. And we need a system that works. And I think that this is really shining a light on that as well. And so all the work that I think most of the people who are panelists on this call have done is really the reason why has come to full bright circle. So I think that we have to change that. So I'm going to kick it over to Ashley, who's also on the call right now.
Okay, hi. So first, I just want to say thank you to the first choose panelists that spoke invited me to join in on this call. You guys are in production, and with non-profit, it's just kind of individuals who have decided to come together in non-hierarchical way to support the community and support especially the most vulnerable community with different ways for the impact. So that being said, I also have one daughter.
Ashley, hold on. I couldn't tell if it was because of mine or yours, but for some reason you're cutting out. And so you might have to do that whole thing rigmarole again. I thought maybe it was because of my internet, because I live out in the country, folks, and I too am a victim of our terrible internet system.
Can no one else hear me either?
Now we can hear you. Do you want to try? Okay. I don't know what happened, but try again.
Okay. I'll try to speak closer to the microphone of my computer. So yeah, I wear an organizer hat. I'm also
I'm sorry. Why don't you put on your headphones again and see if that works?
Let's try it.
Hey everyone, technical difficulties is the name of COVID-19 isolation game. So thank you for being patient.
Let me look at my microphone settings. Noise suppression. Let me try this. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I just turned off the noise suppression settings. So if you hear a lot going on in the background, I apologize. Okay. So I don't want to reiterate too much. But if you missed it,
we didn't hear any of it, so you can reiterate the whole thing.
The whole thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Ashley, and I'm an organizer here in White River Junction in the Upper Valley. And I do a lot of organizing with kind of non-traditional, hierarchical organizations. Right now I'm organizing with Rise Upper Valley. But I'm also a mom and a full-time worker. So I really appreciate Brenda asking me to be on this panel because I haven't really, I've been trapped in a position where I haven't yet been able to put a lot of time into organizing around this issue because I've been staying at home with my daughter and 3 of my coworkers' children. So I have been homeschooling 4 kids since last Monday. So I'm 1 week down and I'm still here to talk about it. And so I've been tuning in. I've been really hands-on in just kind of the raising children, trying to like have meals. One of the really challenging perspectives I've been struggling with is like the balance between hoarding resources and also like feeling safe and secure. That's been an interesting challenge. And I also feel there's been a lack of instruction from our government and our leaders about those kinds of things. But yeah, essentially mom role as well as trying to understand what's going on in the broader community. So I did provide some information from our local mutual aid resources. What we did here in the Upper Valley is we did a single form that anyone can fill out, and within the form you can acknowledge needs or abilities to give or volunteer. And it also kind of encompasses 1, direct needs, but then 2, kind of aiming to create this as a longer lasting network. So it has like, are you interested in food, organizing around food and agriculture in our community? Are you interested in organizing around transportation? So that we don't forget these resources when this crisis ends. So yeah, it's been really inspiring to see the work that the individuals in the community are doing, and they're doing it as individuals. There's no organization whose name is on the form. It's just Upper Valley neighbors coming together. And we really want to emphasize that, like Tanya was saying. And it's not to like say that organizations who are doing something are not great, but just that like here in the Upper Valley, there's so much effort to people to get outside of the nonprofit complex, political establishment, and really the way.
Ashley, you just started cutting out again, at least for me.
Oh,
yeah.
I moved.
Now you're back again. Okay.
Okay. So we have our form for mutual aid, and then we also have a running list of all the mutual aid contacts and digital forms that we have and that we know about in the state. And so that maybe some of you already have that too. I don't want to be redundant, but I know that we're trying to funnel people to active organizations or community efforts where they live. Rutland has some their own activity or do this. And years an effort that we're all taking on in our own neighborhoods.
I don't know what you guys missed in the end. It seems like if I press mute, you go garbled. I don't know why that is. So I will stop pressing mute. But what was the very last thing you said?
I don't even remember.
Okay.
Just something about keeping it local and decentralized.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I live in an area where there aren't a lot of organizations and resources. I happened to be able to get a delivery myself because I am not leaving my house because I had a cold last Tuesday. And so the doctor asked me they can't test, so they asked me to not leave for 14 days. And so I got a delivery from our local food shelf only because the person who was working there when I called happens to live out here, but there is no organizations out here. And so part of the reason this mutual aid is so necessary and is because there isn't an effort that's going into our rural communities, just like happens all the time in Vermont, right? So we have, there is going to be a need. And for example, our town hall, I just found out has given people my number. Like, we know we don't have anything, but call Brenda Siegel, which I thought was fine. It's fine for me, but we're at a place where we are depending on our community members and our community leaders and organizers to make this stuff happen, and volunteers. And so we want to make sure, especially if there's a shelter in place order, which I'll talk about in a minute, that is able to continue. I think it's going to be really important in the communities where there is not those local organizations. So next, I'm going to introduce you to Teddy Waszazak, who is, again, Barre City councilor. Also, just so everybody, I'm going to note it, my former campaign manager for my governor's race, and excellent resource for information, especially in his city, which he loves so much. I'm not going to mute.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Brenda. I just really want to reiterate, when Brenda asked me to do this, I actually said, I was like, I don't quite know what I have to offer here, because the folks like Ashley and Tanya and Jubilee who are putting together these mutual aid works are really the foundation for statewide aid. As many of you may know, we are what's called a Dillon's Rule state, which basically means our municipalities need to request permission from the state to do things beyond what our charter says. That fact, besides holding back progress on local issues, really ties our hands when you get to an emergency situation like this. So from a council perspective, we have very much taken, a lot of us rather, I should say, have taken the position of we're just going to do what we can to get word out about different resources that exist within our communities. Local elected officials tend to know a lot of people in the community, so just moving heads around is something that has been very effective. But from a citywide perspective, Barre is fortunate in that we have a lot of social services in the city. Capstone is here. Our local high school has its own food shelf. We have a very loyal, is what I will call them, school district to UUSD. So our school system has, not only are we having folks come to the schools at prearranged times and prearranged numbers to pick up food, our school buses are actually running their regular route with food on the buses and are giving food to kids directly. So that way our school bus drivers are still employed, and kids who would get food at school are still getting food. So that's something that's been wonderful to watch the school community step up. There are, I'm sure Jacob will push it out, there is a Barre area mutual aid group where you can, they've actually set up like a full website, which is really cool, where you can either sign up as a volunteer or request specific assistance or ask questions about how to get access to certain resources. And another thing that's been really helpful is Barre is very dependent on our small businesses and our local restaurants. We have a ton of restaurants in 4 square miles, and most of them are still open doing takeout things. So our local downtown organization called the Barre Partnership has been doing daily updates about what businesses are open, what services they're offering, what hours they are offering them, and how to access takeout, basically. So that has been a way that we have been able to support our small businesses in our community while still being safe. I saw the governor has continued to take steps ever so slowly towards dealing with this crisis on a statewide level. And, you know, we get messages from the state, we get messages from constituents, we get messages from each other. The only thing that is going, as far as I'm concerned, as municipal official, the only thing that's going to solve this is a lockdown. We either need to lock it down and stay at home, or this virus is going to continue to spread. And there are ways that the other panelists have talked about that our communities are coming together to solve that problem, because we need folks. But like, we're not shutting, the South Barre Hannaford just had to close midday because someone with COVID-19 was allowed into the store because we don't have enough tests. Like, there were people shopping at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. The loudspeakers went on and said, everyone get to the front of the store, now we're closing. And now instead of 3, and that was the only grocery store within walking distance. It's a long walk, but it is within walking distance of downtown Barre. And that only grocery store has now shut down because of lack of testing and a lack of leadership from Governor Scott. So, you know, from a your city officials, I can't say it enough, as Tanya said, we are the people who should be stepping up and leading these operations. And if your local official is not, shame them, because it works. And, you know, even if you have this municipal official that never listens to you, is never going to listen to you, push them, send them messages, let them know you're watching, because like, it's as if Brenda was talking about earlier. We're all in this together, regardless of political party, regardless of political affiliation. We all need food. We all need shelter. We all need to not get sick. And that is something that's very unifying for people. So this is a very overwhelming time for municipal officials, because I hear you and I understand the fact that we should be doing more, but for reasons we've talked about, there's only so much we can do. And so it's incredibly frustrating, and it is incredibly hard to watch the state government and the federal government continue not to step up. I'm also sending out right now, I didn't send it to Jacob, I just bumped it to the panelists, and I just bumped it to attendees too, information for local officials from the state of Vermont. This is a directive from the state that they've given to municipal officials. So if you have a selectman or something who's really dragging their feet on doing it, oh, I don't know what I can do, just send them this link and be like, here's a literally bullet point list of things from the state that you can do to help, and information that you. So for your local officials, try to get them involved as much as you can. Shame them when necessary, but I mean, they're here to help you. We're here to help you, and if you hit a brick wall, please reach out to your local official, because they may be able to just pull the lever somewhere else that will unlock that resource for that person in need. So we've seen great leadership from our communities. We're seeing some directive from the state, at least, that is giving us a direction to go in, and we are seeing, I know this is across the state, great leadership from our school districts. Taking care of their employees, taking care of their students when they need to be. And we have a city council meeting tomorrow in which I personally will be making sure we take care of our city employees during this time too, because there are union contracts that dictate things, and there are financial paywalls. But as Brenda alluded to earlier, in the lack of a proper paid family medical leave in this state, with the lack of a proper response from Governor Scott and President Trump, even though our hands are tied, we need to step up because of that. And if Phil Scott and Donald Trump were excuses not to do things, I don't think any of us would ever leave our houses. So we're just going to keep buckling down. We're going to share resources. We're going to make sure that we're taking care of one another. And we're going to push people when they need to be pushed, because the time is now to step up. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, Teddy. And this is, I love it when an elected leader says push us. So, because I do think that civic engagement is so incredibly important. And so part of that is feeling welcome to tell your elected leaders when you need more. And I will also say that elected leaders in our state house are doing a lot right now, and everybody's tensions are high. They're experiencing the same things we are in terms of being isolated, in terms of homeschooling their kids and having to work from home and trying to figure out what to do. The whole legislative session just got all messed up. And so I think let's also, when they are doing the right thing, thank them. And if there is like a snap or a email that wasn't as nice as it could have been, and they also apologize, let's try to forgive them, because I have seen that legislators feel bad about doing that a couple times in the last recently, and just let's have more forgiveness than usual on that. And speaking of legislators, I am going to introduce you to Representative Mari Cordes, who is not going to be with us very long. She's just going to give us a quick legislative update. And if she has any resources she wants to share, she'll send them to Jacob, and Jacob will push them out. But just letting us know where we're at right now. And maybe you could talk, if you have the information, a little bit about unemployment and the other things that maybe some people don't know about that we didn't talk about last Monday, Mari. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. First, I'm going to apologize for a couple of things right off the bat. I am sick. I was tested yesterday. Rather, that was just between whoever's watching now, and I don't want that. I don't need that to be an issue. It's nothing alarming. Secondly, my dogs have been on high alert and they're barking a lot and bickering with each other. So I will try to mute if they start bickering with each other. I'd like to refer everyone to legislature.vermont.gov. And from there, you can see that the House and the Senate, even though we're not meeting in person at the State House, we've been meeting in conference calls, and like probably everybody here on this Zoom, many of us have cauliflower ears or pieces of plastic embedded into our external ears from all of the conference calls we've been on. So legislators have been in meetings, particularly the Senate. And what the Senate is doing is taking a bill that we in the House passed Friday the 13th. We stayed late in the day to finish that. It was actually a bill that I introduced on the floor about emergency medical service providers and making sure that they get the money that they need. That bill was gutted only to use it, not because the EMS providers aren't important, but because we needed the bill as a vehicle to pass COVID-19 related emergency provisions. The EMS bill, the original bill, wouldn't have taken effect until 2021. So the other issue is this bill that the Senate is working on. It's called H742. We want to make sure that it gets expedited through the legislative process as quickly as possible. So we don't want to have any need to send it through a money committee like Senate Finance or Appropriations. So that's another reason to have taken out the EMS part, because that did have appropriations in it. It's still going to happen, and we're going to put that information in the budget, in the budget bill, and I'll get to that in a minute. So the H742 does a number of things, including it's just for this emergency period of time. So I want to be sure everyone knows that the legislature is still committed to providing strong protections for Vermonters around medical practice of all healthcare professionals, as well as oversight from and of the Green Mountain Care Board. So the kinds of things that are in H742 are only in cases of emergency. And the intent is to remove barriers to accessing health care and to increase the number of providers in the workforce. So if you go to legislature.vermont.gov and go to Senate Health and Welfare, that's where H742 is right now. And you can go through the whole list of provisions that are being put into that bill. It's like an omnibus bill. So it'll do things like allow the OPR, the Office of Professional Regulation, and the Board of Medical Practice to issue temporary licenses to people that may be working in a different jurisdiction, but we need them working here and then it will also, for advanced practice nurses, new advanced practice nurses are required by state law to complete a 2-year collaborative practice agreement with another provider. And this bill, should the Senate pass it, and the governor, and it goes through the complete process and the governor signs it, would waive that 2-year collaborative practice agreement. It also, let me get to the bill again. Oh, and while I'm looking for it, so on the legislature.vermont.gov, you can see the Senate calendar, and the Senate will be in session tomorrow and working remotely. So while the legislators have been working from home, the IT and the Rules Committee, the IT staff and the Rules Committee in the State House have been working super hard to follow the Constitution around open meeting law, and yet also allow legislators to continue to be responsive to the needs of Vermonters, which means we still need to be passing bills, passing legislation. So the most important task is to pass this bill that I mentioned. You won't see it on the Senate calendar. I don't see it there now for tomorrow, but they will be talking about it tomorrow and I believe on Wednesday. So I'm hoping that bill will get through the legislative process this week. The other thing that the bill does is provide, and this is, it's around telehealth and telemedicine. So telehealth and telemedicine, we've been working on in-house healthcare anyway. And so this part of this bill will become statute if it passes, not just in an emergency. So there's some really important provisions that allow providers to be reimbursed for many kinds of telehealth and telemedicine. It does provide, when there's a state of emergency like now, for mental health counselors to provide counseling by audio only, which is not, and to be reimbursed for that, which is not normally the case. So I think there's a lot in there, and I think that's all I have the wind for right now. I will say that Brenda's website is a great resource, and there's another, for people that are on social media, there's another great resource called How Can I Help? It's a group, Facebook group called How Can I Help? #prepare. And in the topics area, there are a ton of resources about unemployment insurance, information about how you can apply for that online now. Today, the governor just announced what we had already known to be true, but around taxes, is that the personal income tax filing and filing dates, because the federal date was moved to July 15th, that automatically meant Vermont's would be as well, because you need the federal to work on your state. The only way to change that would be if the legislature passed a bill changing that, and that's extremely unlikely. So the tax department issued guidance today saying that that yes, July 15th is the new filing tax date. Lastly, I just want to encourage everyone to call in every day at 4 o'clock. The Joint Rules Committee has a phone meeting that's open to the public. And every meeting, they invite someone from a government agency to talk. Tomorrow will be Michael Sherling from Department of Public Safety. And you can find that call-in information at the legislature.vermont.gov, as well as on the How Can I Help Facebook group. So thanks for having me on. Unless there's any questions, I think I'm gonna go back to resting.
I mean, if it's okay with you, Mari, I'm gonna let you go back to resting, and we'll handle any questions. And if we can't handle them, we'll ask you, because I think it's important to rest. But thank you so much for coming on and giving us a legislative update, because I think that's an important thing that's needed. And I appreciate you coming on while you're not feeling well after a long day of legislative stuff to do that. So thank you very much, Mari.
And I just want to say one more thing, that as a legislator, I have the good fortune to be be able to hear all of the ongoing work behind the scenes. And I can say that all of the state agencies, especially the ones that are most pertinent, are working at hyper speed and very deliberately being in a way that would be most beneficial and least harmful. So as much as I also want a shelter in place type order, I also understand the administration, we're going to get there. It's not going to look exactly, it's not going to be exactly that. But I understand how methodical they are being. And I just want to put some appreciation out there for everyone working their hinds off right now.
Thank you, Mari. Thanks for joining us. Bye. So Teddy just let me know that he has something to add, that I wanted to just kick it over to him for a second. And pretty soon we should also have Katy on with us, and we're looking forward to that.
Yes, thank you very much. Mari talking about the pushback tax deadlines reminded me, I did some research, and because of we're not in the same situation that bigger states like Massachusetts or New York are, in which municipalities themselves can suspend. In certain situations, we can suspend some, but most municipalities in the state cannot suspend rent payments, mortgage payments, or utility payments. That's just something that's not typically within our power. Like in Barre City, for example, we control the water bills, but that's it. So for a statewide moratorium for mortgages, rents, utility bills, et cetera, that would have to come from the executive branch as well.
I also want to thank you, Teddy, and I also want to kick it over to Tanya, who also had something to add about what comes next.
I think thanks, Brenda and Teddy and everyone. Like it's wonderful to just hear what's happening across the state. And I think it's really great that our communities are coming together now. And one of the things that has really come up for me as all of this has happened is how many people are right on the edge of being okay. And it only takes this is not a little thing, it's a pretty big thing, but that there just are a lack of social safety nets. And right now, our communities are really mobilized to help. But what about 6 months from now, when the person suddenly is hit with 6 months of rent that they haven't been able to pay, and 6 months of utility bills, and no longer is the community as mobilized? And so I think it speaks to some larger governmental failures at the federal and state level to ensure that people aren't living on the edge and that people are able to take care of their basic needs. Because I see it happen. I saw it happen in Irene as well. Communities came together, they did amazing work, they supported each other, and there are still people reeling and economically harmed from that, and that happened 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And so we have to not just think about what we do in the moment of crisis, but what we do to lift everyone up and ensure that we have structural things in place to prevent people from being so close to on the edge that a week without work means they can't feed their kids.
Yeah, I feel it's kind of a strange situation if this is the fight you've been fighting for a long time. And I think probably everyone on this call has been really fighting this fight, this economic justice fight, and this racial justice and climate justice, which I've heard people who are in the climate justice world saying, you know, we can listen to science now, but we couldn't listen to it when, like, we have to do both. And so it's hard to think about that right now, but I do want us to note it, because if we just don't note it, then it means when we get through this moment, then we're going to have a situation where we still aren't fixing it. Like, we could have fixed it after Tropical Storm Irene. There's been a million times when we could have fixed it, not a million probably, but part of that is making sure your voice is out there. It's not, you know, everyone that's on this call right now, even though Tanya and I are both running for office and Teddy is now an elected official, everyone that's on this call right now, the fight that we've been fighting is on the ground as one of you. I'm a low-income single mom, that even with some safety nets that other people don't have, I have been able to meet all of our needs. And this situation, I've lost my work, is going to be a real challenge for me and my family. Tanya has been doing this work and is someone who has a healthcare story and also is a social worker and also, you know, has college loans but she's been fighting this fight. And the thing is, we recognize that not everyone can get to the State House all the time, but we have, through Rights and Democracy and through other organizations, there are ways to fight in your local community if you can't, and we also can help you with tools. I'm happy to help you as a candidate or as a human or through my role as a member leader at Rights and Democracy. However you're most comfortable, I'm happy to help and talk about with you about how you can jump in and start to fight for some of these issues, because I think it's become quite clear that we have to make this change, because when we don't, I just wrote a commentary that will be out in the next couple of days, and what we have seen is the gaping hole in our system that shows that there are so many people living below or at or just above the margin that the second something like this happens, our entire economy crumbles. And we can't have that. We need to be in a place where that is not what's going to happen, because it's not good for our economy. It's not good for our businesses. It's not good for our community. This is our opportunity to build the economy from the bottom up. And in order to do that, we need all of your voices. So while we're here today talking about COVID-19, I want to make sure that we are working on these issues going forward, that we don't forget them during this process. I mean, let's take time to regroup with our families and do all of that work, but let's not forget those issues during this process either, and elect leaders who are fighting for these issues and deeply committed to those issues. And I guess I'll do a little plug right in the middle here while we're waiting for Katy to come on. I don't know if she's on yet. Nope, don't see her. So Tanya and I have teamed up actually to do some fundraising, and I will let you know that neither of us have been focused on our campaigns in the last week and a half or 2 weeks. We have been, oh, she is here. Just a second, Katy. Carrie, that's Catherine Edmund when you see her. So we have been focused on getting community needs met. We have been focused on how we relieve. I've been focused on how we provide some relief for people in terms of just a way to escape the moment too. So we've been doing that through the campaign. Both Tanya and I have been doing mutual aid work. We have been not hardcore in campaign mode. I've put my campaign resources into this now. So our team is also doing this work for a good portion of the day, every day. So we have teamed up, and we did it right before this all happened, but we're still here, and we have created a fundraiser that we're doing together. It's a joint fundraising form through Act Blue, and whatever you can donate right now, it would really help us, because our opponents are on the phone making calls to raise money while we are doing this work. And so we would really love any help that you're able to give right now in terms of all of that. So I don't know if Tanya wants to join in. We've been doing this activist work for a long time together, and now we plan to continue it in the State House.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brenda. I mean, for me, it really is all about the people and making sure that the people get what they need, and are provided supports as they need them. And that's why I am running, because I see because I am the people, because I have been the person who couldn't get my needs met. And so I definitely, it speaks to me. We have to diversify the voices at the table, and we need people who want to have their feet on the ground doing the work. And that, I'm still working as a social worker supporting the families at school that are trying to navigate how the heck do they manage homeschooling and working and being on, and the families that I work with are the families that are on and below the margin. And so I am using pretty much all of my extra time and energy to make sure that my community the same people in my community don't fall through the cracks. And so anything people are able to chip in and help with is definitely much appreciated.
Yeah, I just to add to that, we just do not, I think both, I can speak for Tanya and say that it just does not feel like the right time to be asking people who are losing their jobs in phone calls and call time for money. It feels much more important to do this work. And so if you are able to help, if you are doing okay, please do that. So I am now ready to introduce you to Katy Edmund. And she is a school teacher and a mom and a high school teacher and a mom, and she has been doing incredible live streams that are awesome. And I just want to add one more thing. She was my next door neighbor when I was a kid growing up. She is much younger. No, you're not much younger.
Not too much, no. We played together a little bit down the block.
We did.
Big wheels around Western Ave.
We did. I think her brother was either in my class or just below, and she's a little younger. But yes, we rode bikes around the neighborhood. So, but I have been watching her live streams about about what she's doing for homeschooling in the morning, even though I don't have small children, because they're not only they're engaging, but they're incredible ideas. And I will tell you that I've thought, like, how do I make this work for an 18-year-old? And sometimes, and I've tried, but
Well, that's so cool. It's so funny because when I did the first one, it was more like I was having cabin fever, and social media, I don't tend to go on social media a lot because I'm too busy. And as a high school teacher, I'm certainly not playing on my phone when I'm teaching classes. But being stuck at home is hard for extroverts in this process. So it was I posted one just to kind of reach out and tell people what we're doing. My mother is in Florida and my in-laws were in Florida. So the grandparents were having a tough time being away and not seeing the kids. So mostly it was for them to see what we were up to. And then I got all this amazing feedback about people that were really enjoying them and wanted me to do more. And I've been doing one a day. Unfortunately, the last two that I did a Sunday one about relaxation, and I did one today. And they aren't posting anymore for some reason. There's a slowdown. I don't know if there's too many videos or they're too long, or Facebook's like, we've had enough of you, lady. Quit it. But so they haven't uploaded, but I'm going to keep trying to get them out there. I might, if I can find time, it's amazing that, I've never envied people that work from home. I don't know how they do it. It's exhausting. I work long hours when I work at school. During drama productions with rehearsals, there's sometimes 12-hour days. And this is a whole new ball game. These are 15-hour days, and you never really leave the office because your home is your office. But so it's been fun to see the response and to see that people are really benefiting from stuff that we're doing around the house and feeling connected to people through these virtual resources that we have. I can tell you just a little bit about what I have done with my kids if you'd like. I have some stuff from today that we did and some work I can show you guys, or you can ask questions, or however you'd like to handle it.
So we would love to hear about some of just what you just said. We'd love you to tell us whatever you want to tell us about it and share some of those ideas and resources. And yeah.
Okay. Well, the best resource I have is my kids. I mean, I can't take all the credit here. They come up with amazing ideas on the fly. When this first happened, I found out on Friday, I came home from work prepared that we probably weren't going back Monday. And when we got the notice Sunday night, I said, we got to have a schedule. More for me than the kids really, but my kids like structure. So I sat down and I put together a schedule, picking out blocks of time that I know are the best for them as far as attention and focus. I've been pretty candid online about my son's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So it's really hard. You know, he's got a lot of energy and there are certain times of the day when he can focus better. So I highlighted those as our learning time or our hands-on learning time. And then I scheduled playtime and breaks and snack and walks around that and kind of structured our day that way. And I really wanted to make it a point that Monday through Friday, 8 to 3 is kind of a screen-free time. I mean, they have learning games that they do, that the teacher sends a Chromebook home. So there's learning on the Chromebook that happens. There's some math games on the tablet, but I didn't want to get in the habit because it would be really easy to sit them in front of the TV and get in here and do my work. And that would be easy, but it would also be really hard because we wouldn't be engaging and they would melt down with no structure. That's just how they are. Even with the structure, they're having their meltdowns too. And I just need that structure too in my day. This is for people with anxiety or depression, being holed up in your house and not being able to go anywhere is really hard. And so one of the ways to combat that is to have a list of goals, you know, a manageable list of goals that you can get through in a day, and to kind of hold yourself accountable with these timelines. If you say, okay, we're going to do an hour of reading today, and that's our big goal, and we're going to do that from roughly this time, it makes you stay on track. So when I'm in here, you know, chatting with my high school students or putting on vocabulary quizzes or whatever we're doing for the day, I know, okay, it's my kids' time now, I got to go, and kind of keep me on track. So that's how this whole thing kind of started. You know, as a high school teacher, I'm a high school English teacher and drama teacher. And, you know, we do a lot with the literature as the foundation of what we teach, you know. So we have a novel or a play that we're reading in class, and then we analyze it. We look at theme and we write about it. And we try different forms of writing, narratives, creative writing. So I've kind of taken what I do with my high schoolers and I've adapted it for my kids, because I have a pre-K, Emma, who's 4, and I have a second grader, Ben, who's 7. So typically I'll pick a theme for the day or a book, a piece of literature we're going to work with. That's on grade level for Ben. And when we start our literacy block, as I call it, Ben will read the story to Emma and I'll help with challenging words. And then we have some sort of follow-up around that story. So either Ben will, in his notebook, write questions about the story, and Emma, because she can't write, she does everything visually through pictures. So she draws the story. Or we'll write a sequel to the story. And Emma can dictate to me. In fact, one of our stories, probably won't be able to see this very well, but one of our stories after we read it, Emma dictated this entire sequel to me. And I was writing like a madwoman trying to keep up with this 4-year-old's imagination as she's telling me like, oh, well, then they're gonna go here and then there's a cave. And I'm like, you gotta slow down, I can't write that fast. But it's a chance, she's developing all the same literacy skills, she's just doing them orally or through pictures. So she is gaining those skills, it's just a different medium than Ben. One of the things we have built in every day is a walk. Part of that, again, is for me. I need exercise. We all need exercise, and it's easy to sit in front of screens and go comatose. So we always have a nature walk. I schedule like roughly an hour for it, but we usually only go for 20 minutes to a half hour, depending on how we're feeling on that day. One day we were getting ready to go, and Ben just said, wait, while we're walking, let's do a scavenger hunt. And I was like, cool, what do you want to look for? He's like, I've got this. And he got out papers and he made lists for each of us to find things. And so we did that, and it was great. And we looked at nature. Today, while we were doing our walk, he had the great idea. He said, Mom, why don't we collect things that we can then use at arts and crafts time to build with? And I was like, cool, let's do that. We collected all kinds of stuff. So as things have been going along, we've been getting supplies from school and more grade-focused activities from the teachers. So I've kind of trimmed back a little bit what I'm doing with them to accommodate time for what the teachers have in mind and what grade level skills they need to do. Today, the focus was on chores. because, as many of you probably feel, like my house is falling apart. I don't have, between teaching my kids and teaching my students and making 3 meals a day. Gosh, I miss school lunch, you know, and doing all the dishes from that. It's exhausting. And so to try and clean a house is just unheard of. And, you know, one of my big issues is I'm a control freak. It's so much easier to come home and say, all right, if I cook dinner, it's going to take 20 minutes. If the kids help, it's going to be an hour and 20 minutes. And there's going to be a big mess to clean up. So I've been letting go of that a lot. And part of that was with chores. It's like, you know, the house is filthy. They need to learn these skills. Let's do some chores together as part of our day. And I'm going to understand that the bathroom that would take me 10 minutes to do is going to take 45 minutes, walking them through what to do and helping them and making sure they're washing their hands and being safe and all that. But at the end of the day, something got cleaned and they learned something. So it's a really important thing to, I think, incorporate. We don't always have energy or time. If we're running late or something needs to get cut out of the day, chores are the first thing on the chopping block. It's like, oh, we all overslept, or, oh no, we have to do this. Bye-bye chores. Just because I think everybody's tired and scared and overwhelmed, and you got to cut yourself some slack. I mean, I put up these videos of the fun things I'm doing with my kids, but I'm not posting the videos where, like today, when Emma screamed bloody murder for an hour because she didn't want to take a nap, and, you know, Ben cried because he missed his friends. You know, that's all stuff that I'm sure we're all going through. So it's important to remember that you can take ideas and you can take resources that people are putting out there, but you got to do what works for your family. This is working for us, but I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of families that kind of scheduling wouldn't really work for. So, so today the theme was chores. We started off by taking out the trash and emptying the garbage cans. And then when I was thinking about it while we were taking out the trash, I said, you know, chores, those are like jobs. And I think we have some books around the house about different jobs. So we collected a couple of the books that tell about different jobs, and we sat and thumbed through them and read them. And then I said, we're going to do a research project. And that was that they had to pick a job and we would talk about what that job does. Benjamin would then write about it, and Emma would dictate to me and then illustrate the different things the job does. And I thought, you know, wouldn't it be cool to, like, because kids don't really understand what's going on. We've explained to our children there's a bad cold and we're trying to keep them healthy and safe, and everybody's trying to keep healthy and safe. And that's why we're staying in the house so much and not going out with our friends. But it's very hard for them, I think, to understand the gravity of this situation. So I thought it would be a really cool opportunity, as we're talking about jobs, to highlight those essential workers. So I said, for this activity, you can pick being a doctor or a nurse. You can pick being a police officer, a fireman, a grocery store worker, or a custodian. And they wanted to be a grocery store worker and a custodian. And so those are the trades or work we focused on. And Ben wrote about all the things a custodian does. Emma dictated to me what she thinks a grocer does, and we talked about them, and then she illustrated them. And I was really proud of them, because I think a lot of us have felt that kind of draw of these unsung heroes that are out there literally risking our lives to make sure that we're healthy and we're safe and that we have food on our table for our families. So I thought that was really cool that we could take a moment to kind of pay homage to those people, even if it's just through talking about the work they do. So yeah, those are some of the things we've done. Did you guys have any questions or anything like that?
So I think that we're at the place now, unless anybody has anything to add, where we can, people can ask questions and we will answer them no matter who you have them for. And I want to just add that a lot of what Katy said is kind of true. Also, like I said, I have a senior in high school, and he is, I'm not dictating his schedule necessarily, but I'm spending a lot of time making sure that homework's getting done, making sure that we're having fun together. I mean, once you have an 18-year-old, they kind of go off and do their own thing, and you kind of separate a lot. And so we have to put some real work into making sure that I'm not just like doing my own thing and he's doing his own thing, because then we will have no human connection at all. And also right now he's happy. He's like going outside for 2 hours a day, and he's like, I'm into this actually. But he's also sad that he's ending his senior year in high school probably this way, although he's not ready to accept that that's probably what's going to happen. I've talked about it with him a lot, that I don't see that this is ending anytime soon, and we're probably not going back. And hopefully graduation can be postponed and he'll get to walk, and hopefully that's something that's going to be an option, but I might tear up a little. It's hard for him at the idea of not walking, and it's really hard for me as a mom. I raised him by myself. I have been waiting for this moment to see my child graduate, and the fear that I'm not going to get to is real. And so I also want us to be cognizant that this is hard for our kids too, and it's also hard for parents, and that people are losing things right now. People are losing weddings, and while those are smaller than our basic needs in terms of urgency, being really honest that people are losing events. We're canceling the dance festival this year. People are losing, which I haven't announced yet, but I guess I just did, and that people are losing graduations, and like my friend who's going to be graduating at 40 in New Hampshire will not probably be graduating and walking. She's worked really hard for that. I think it's hard to complain about that problem because there's basic needs issues happening right now, but those things also are mental health issues. They are trauma, and they are PTSD, and they are things that you lose and you never get back. And so I want us to be honest when we're dealing with this issue to also address that and address people in those situations.
And cancel our musical, and it was traumatizing. I mean, the kids, it was the day before the show, and I had to look out at those kids who'd been rehearsing for 3 months for Mamma Mia and tell them their parents weren't going to get to watch all the hard work they'd put out there. And they, the seniors graduating, you bring up a really good point, Brenda. These are milestones, and they're not, you're right, they're small in the grand scheme, but they're not small in individuals' lives. They're huge milestones that are being missed.
Yeah. And Tanya had, from a social worker point of view, because she's a social worker, had a comment on these issues.
Yeah, I think one of the things I find myself saying a lot right now is that we are all losing something during this time, and we are all in this together, and that if any time is the time to be a little bit kinder than we have to be, and to try and with both ourselves and the people around us, now's that time. And to find the places, I keep letting everyone know that I work with and in my life that, the places that we can try to make things as normal as possible. Obviously nothing about this time is normal, but the going through to keep things as normal as we can is really important, and taking that time and that space to process that and to know that it's okay. Just because what someone else is struggling with is bigger than what you're struggling with doesn't make your struggle not real and not important. And so I think it's so important right now, as we speak about connectedness, yes, we want to make sure that people have food, and we want to make sure that people have healthcare, but we also want to make sure that people have connection. And so I think we have to organize that as well. It's one of the things that we're working to get up off the ground in the Essex area is virtual places that are held just for an hour to an hour and a half for people to come and have these conversations. It doesn't have to be the conversation that the world is crashing down around me, but I'm mad, I'm upset, and that we can just be together as people, because we are all in this together, and every one of us is losing something through this process. And so I think it's really important that we honor that and we hold that together and are kind to one another.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Tanya. I want to say that I've had these moments, and then I'm like, it's selfish to feel that way. Everybody is struggling, but I've had these moments where 2 years ago, my nephew died of a heroin overdose, and the crisis I've just barely gotten to the place where I can really move forward in a way that where that's not like it's always going to be a constant, but where and I've just got moved through the crisis enough to be able to make it a normal part of my life. And I have had moments where I'm like, I don't want to be experiencing another crisis. I can't experience another crisis. And I've had to reach out to my dad who and say, it feels, even though it's everybody experiencing it, it feels unfair. Why are we experiencing another thing? Why does my son have to experience another thing before he graduates? Like, why can't we? And so I think anyone who's feeling anything, I don't want you to feel like it's selfish. I don't want you to feel like, I want you to reach out for help. You can reach out to probably anyone on this panel is willing to help you. You can reach out. There's also organizations. There's a statewide resource list, which I haven't tagged yet here in the comments, but we are definitely, we have the statewide resource list, which also has some mental health resources. But if you really just need a place to go to reach out for friends, our campaign page is also going to be starting, Facebook page is also going to be starting a group that is just for people, like a support group. It's not going to be for campaigning. It's going to be a support group so people can see that. We will tag in there the fun levity events that we're creating for people to get away from it. But other than that, this is going to be about people who need a space. Maybe they'll be like, hey, can anyone jump on a Zoom call? I'm really feeling lonely, because I also think a lot about I don't have a partner, but I do have a child, but people who live completely alone right now and there's no human interaction. I just want us to add that into resources that we need. And Ashley has something to add about that.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. I switched to a different computer because mine is ancient. So yeah, I mean, just to empathize with what you all were talking about with the losses, I just got the email today that my daughter's ballet recital, which has been like this huge mounting thing for her. Like, she's never been on stage. She has a lot of like anxiety and insecurity in front of a group of people. So this was like a huge thing. It's canceled. It's in June and it's canceled. There's like a very slight chance that they might change their mind, but it didn't seem like she was moving in that direction. So yeah, those are the losses that I think a lot of people are just starting, like it's just starting to sink in, that this is not, I think a lot of people thought that this might only last a week or two. But I feel, especially because we haven't moved quicker to shut things down, it's just prolonging this. So yeah, I just wanted to empathize with that, but then also note that one thing I'm trying to do, which is very trying throughout the day, as I have 4 kids with me, is to kind of reflect on the fact that as a mom, I've felt a lot of sadness living in our very demanding capitalist society, that the majority of my child's life is not spent with me. Like, I felt a lot of sorrow over the past 4 years that like my kid is gone 8 hours of the day. And so I've been trained to deal with adults all day long and to be able to control everything. And it's like her teachers who get to deal with like the tantrums and the curiosity and the stubbornness. And now that's on me. And it's been really challenging to like get my patience and like enjoy, like take joy in that curiosity. But I just keep reminding myself, like, remember how much like you hated being away from them. And so yeah, that's like the silver lining for me has been that like, and it's going to take, my biggest fear is that by the time I'm fully engaged and immersed in a really interactive homeschooling experience, I'm going to have to go back to work. So I hope that our society can take away from this as well, just that piece of it, like how much we take for granted our own families and the people in our own household who we spend so little time with. And with today's technology, we're finding that so many people can work remotely. So many, our jobs can get done in a 4-day work week. Our jobs can get done in a 6-hour day or a 5-hour day. So I hope that is a takeaway too from this.
Yeah, I think letting people stay home when they're sick should be something we take away. I think the need to be with our kids should be something that we take away. The need to go outside. I mean, I will say that I've had touching moments where we would go for a drive to get out of our house for a second, or we go for a walk, but we go for a drive and we drive by and there's all these people outside. like there was when we were kids and Katie and I were biking around the neighborhood. I think that there are some takeaways here. The cost is not worth it, I don't think. And certainly not if we don't fix it for the future, because we need to fix it. But perhaps we don't need to be the workaholic, never stopping, never eating with our families, never, never turning off societies. I mean, I've had to work pretty constantly since I've been home, but I also have had more time with my child. I also have done the dishes since last Tuesday. I've done 10 dishwasher loads. I'm keeping a check mark. So these are the interesting things that I'm doing. I have a tally of how many dozen eggs, how many half gallons of milk, and how many dish loads I do, because I started being like, wow, if we don't leave the house ever, we go through a lot. And what does that cost resource-wise? What does that do to our environment? How could we cut it down? Like, those are just thoughts I've had. I also started crossing off on the calendar the days, because I have more than once been like, wait, I thought it was Friday. Wait, what day is it? And I've heard a lot of people doing that. I saw someone on Friday say on Facebook, today is Friday, you're welcome. And I've been at home, except it was my son's birthday last weekend and we weren't, but other than that, we've been at home since last Thursday, like 2 Thursdays ago. And we've actually been isolated, not left at all, except to pick up groceries from an outdoor location after someone dropped them off in a driveway or in my dad's garage where he put on the fridge outside so that I could get to them and then wipe it all down with alcohol wipes. Because I couldn't get anyone to bring them to me, but that's the only time we've been out since last Tuesday. And so I really think that this is really something, and that there's a lot of moments that feel like despair, and some moments that I feel worried, like Ashley does, that I'll get to a place where like, okay, I'm comfortable with it. My house is finally in some sort of order that works for this, because right now it doesn't. And then all of a sudden, we'll be running around trying to make up for the time that we missed. On the other hand, the idea that we might be able to hug someone again, or like shake hands or hold hands, or, all those things really do feel like loss, to not be able to give your friend a hug, if you just to wave at them from like 6 feet away or across the street, or not at all, to not be able to go to my dad's house and see him, because he's at risk until we've been quarantined for quite some time. So I think after a month, if we don't go anywhere at all, we could see him. So I think those things are all real. And I want to, like I said before, I want us to treat them as real. So I wanted to hear from one more person before we ask questions about just the kid stuff, and that's Jubilee, because she's the other mom on our call. And so I want to make sure to hear from her as well.
So this is actually my second day kind of home with the kids. I had a number of like 10 to 12 hour days in a row at the shelter. So my husband got to spend that time with them, which is difficult because he is an essential worker who works nights. So also needs to sleep during the day. So we're still figuring things out. It's going to be much easier on the days where I'm home. And the school district is now starting tomorrow. They're going to start having kind of schooling from home. And I'm working on plans to kind of make that all happen peacefully and be able to meet my kind of work requirements as well. But yeah, I'm kind of right now in the thick of it, and still trying to figure it out. But I really, what you guys said is, it's really been hard for me, especially, I mean, since my, daughter was a toddler, I was in school and working, and it's really hard having other people getting to spend kind of the bulk of your children's days with them. So I just plan to look, that's kind of the framing I'm using, is there's going to be challenges. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be yelling. There's going to be tears. but also remembering that this is like an opportunity to spend time with my children when I probably wouldn't have gotten it, you know, if we weren't in the midst of this crisis. So I'm also just trying to value that time with them. And, you know, I see a lot of things people posting, you know, like if the learning doesn't happen, if the laundry doesn't happen, really, you know, just be spending some time with the people you love. There's a once in a life kind of opportunity to have that connection. So for me, with my children, that's kind of the priority.
Thank you, Jubilee. That's awesome. And I think that's also excellent advice. And Tanya had one more thing, but let's start queuing up questions. So after Tanya goes, people can ask us questions. And I want to just add that Jacob, my field director, said, I don't think 2 hours is long enough. And I said 2 hours is plenty long. And I just want to say publicly that egg on my face, 2 hours is not long enough. So those of us that can stay a little longer and answer questions, we will. Because it wasn't long enough for this discussion. So next time we do this discussion, which we plan on doing every few weeks, I haven't figured out exactly how often we need to right now, but it'll be by a need. So it'll be like either every 2 weeks or every month. That's the case. And so yeah, we will answer your questions. Don't worry if you're there ready to ask them. Go ahead, Tanya.
So what I hear everyone talking about is really just all the different crises points. And as a social worker, what I tell people all the time is that a crisis, while dangerous, is also an opportunity to rebuild something really different. And as we move through this, I want us to be thinking about not only how we get through the immediate danger and really support through all of this, but also how we utilize this as an opportunity to build something better than what we had before.
I totally agree with you on that, and I think that is what we need to do. And on that note, if there is some question, if Carrie can unmute people, I believe is how this is working, and if they have questions that they want to ask. There were some questions at the very beginning. I don't know if Helena still wants to ask those questions, but I'll let Carrie take care of that. That's what she's good at, and a lot of other things.
Actually, Ashley has a question that she'd like to ask one of your panelists. So Ashley, please go ahead.
You have to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess this is a question for the other moms, also the teacher perspective, and even like anyone's perspective. So I mentioned that I'm home with 4 kids. 3 of them are not mine. They're my boss's children. 2 of them go to the local public school here and are in 2nd and 3rd grade, 2nd and 4th, something like that. So they have pretty like strict daily schedules that have been given to them by their teachers that are 99% on a computer. And while I value to some extent, like watching them do their typing and their interactive reading exercises, I'm like, still just have this weird feeling about 2 of the 4 kids being on screens most of the day because they have to, and then having the other 2 kids really wanting to be on their screens. So how is anybody else experiencing the kind of like mandated screen time from the schools, and if so, how are you handling it?
Oh, go ahead, Julie.
It almost feels like a way to kind of get involved and talk with the school district, because in my children's school district, that's totally not the case. They do have some, you know, like my daughter is in middle school, and so they use a Google platform, and so they're doing some of that. But even for her, the teachers are requesting that they only spend 3 hours a day doing that kind of stuff, and then they've got like they should be going outside and exploring, so they've got all of this other stuff kind of built in. And then for my younger two, I have 7-year-old twins who are in first grade. They do have a Chromebook they're sharing as well. But then it's more like it's really only going to be used to kind of have like Zoom chats with their class. It's more used as a social tool. And so all of their assignments are, about reading and one thing we were working on today was finding collections of something we have in our house and sorting them and then counting them. And some of their other lessons have involved going on a walk and then writing a story and drawing a picture about it. So it feels, like I agree with your concerns. Like we shouldn't be sticking them in front of TVs. And there are obviously other school districts in Vermont who are relying less on the screen time. So it might be like a call to action to kind of talk with the school district and be like, hey, other school districts are able to design these programs with less screen time. What can we do and how can we help teachers and how can we connect and make that happen? Because I don't think you can learn in all sorts of ways, not just in front of a computer screen.
Yeah, Julie really hit the nail on the head, because that is that's a definite parent advocacy piece that needs to be handled. We one of the things is that many educators that I work with are struggling with right now is that we're asking for a huge paradigm shift. As a high school teacher, I did a master's course a semester ago on online teaching. I had to teach online classes, and so I'm familiar and comfortable with the virtual classroom. And one of the first things you learn is that online school is not regular school. And when you teach online, you aren't to expect what you would expect in a standard classroom. There are assignments given, it's a give and take, but the majority of the responsibility lies on the student. Now, granted, that's the high school level, but many of the educators I work with feel strongly that we need to ask our high schoolers to sit down and check in first block from 8 to 9:30 with their first block teacher. And second block, they need to be at that computer with their second block teacher. And many of us agree that that is an unrealistic expectation. We have kids who are suffering trauma. We have kids who are home with parents who are out of work because their work has shut down and they don't know how they're going to pay for it. And we have recognized, if you are an educator, as Jubilee said, you recognize that learning happens in many ways. My son's teacher did send home a Chromebook, but she also sent home an email saying that she's happy to give daily lessons of what she expects us to do, or she could give a suggestion for the week of the activities that they should finish, but she's going to do what parents want. And I think it's really important you advocate that, because to a certain degree, yes, middle and high school, they're going to be in front of that screen a lot. Still shouldn't be more than like 4 hours a day, maybe 5 if they're doing it in breaks. They should not be there for 7 hours plus homework. That's ridiculous. And for second and fourth graders, that's unhealthy. And I think we all know that and recognize that. So I would definitely send an email or make a call to the school and say, listen, this isn't working for us. What's your policy on this? And I would be happy to supply any information I can about the way other districts are handling it. It's unfortunate, we as a society, we can't be prepared for every event, but it is unfortunate that we go to these extremes. We have a common core and we have these very high expectations for what we expect to happen in grade levels. Yet there's no consistent plan in the state level, let alone the national level, of what's expected of students and parents right now while they're all home.
Yeah, and I wanted to just echo that. My son went to an elementary school where there was none of that, and he just finished calculus and is getting into college and doing they learned outside, and they learned in a more creative way, kind of some of the stuff that Katy has been talking about when she does her live streams. It's been very creative uses of tools for math, for everything, and he seems to be all right. He's 18, and so I think that I've seen some of that with some people, and I'm worried that we can't even like as teachers, we're so worried about continuing that we can't even step away from it and realize that kids are going to have to learn from high school college all the way down in a different way. I mean, I was just taking 2 CCV classes, and he missed an assignment last week because they said they weren't going to have any classes last week, and the person doing the teaching said no assignments will be accepted late at all. And I was like, this does not seem like it's a college class, but so I don't have access to the advocacy in the same way. I encouraged him to advocate for himself because he missed this assignment. This is not the time for that. Like, this is the time for flexibility and understanding that people are concerned and worried and anxious and that they may be late on things. I mean, we're doing that with ourselves and work. And in what there's very, aside from like grant deadlines and there's like sometimes we have a deadline that's like firm, you know, for Tanya and I, it's primary, like that's it. We can't always it's not reality that you can't go to people and say, I'm really sorry I haven't gotten that to you yet. I'll get it to you tomorrow. I've had a really busy week, or I've had or there's a global pandemic and I feel unstable right now because of that, or my life is really, I don't know how to do this, live at home. I'm afraid we don't have the resources like that. You can't do that with that. We expect our kids to be any different than we feel about it. And we expect parents to be able to stay on it in that way. I think that's extreme. I see a question from, okay. Carrie is maybe, I don't know if you're going to ask the questions or I'm supposed to read it.
Sure. This was a question that was posed by Heidi early on in the discussion. She said, I feel like the guidance we've received about getting basic needs met, groceries primarily, has been minimal from the federal government as well as local. And she, in her opinion, that's the weakest link during this pandemic. And while she says they're lucky to have farm stands at the moment and basic deliveries, her question really is directed to you, Brenda. As Lieutenant Governor, how do you think this guidance could be better?
So I mean, what you're seeing me do right now is what I would do in this situation. I think part of the reason that everyone that's here has stepped up is for that exact reason, that we do not have the guidance we need. We do not have a system in place. And it's been a little bit of a fumble too, like us figuring out what is the safest practice for this. How do we make sure that people, this 14-day thing took a while for us to get to, like letting people only go do these runs every 14 days to make sure it's safe. But it did seem to me that some of this guidance was appropriate right in the beginning. And while I understand that we want the health department, we want to follow the guidance of the health department, we want to follow the guidance of folks that are coming out, but also I have never been one that thinks we should not question authority. And so I welcome and as Lieutenant Governor, I will welcome when people come to me and say, I think this is being done wrong and I want to talk to you about it, or I feel really anxious that our kids are still in school when it seems clear to me that the spread is going to happen faster because of that. And I welcome those criticisms of myself and of our government. And I believe that if we were in the same situation where it was the same set of circumstances where this was not happening quickly enough, unfortunately, the Lieutenant Governor does not have the ability to necessarily change that. But I would do exactly what I did here, which is start a statewide mutual aid response and begin to gather information, resources, the science, talk to the health department. The first thing we did was talk to the health department before we decided to stop in-person campaign activity. They did not offer us guidance. They just told us just to follow what everyone else was saying. We did not feel that was enough. We felt that we needed to stop going to the events. So that's why we did that. And then, and I would speak out on that. I would say, look, our administration is working really hard and in some regards doing a really great job, but we need to have the information we need about grocery shopping. How can we grocery shop safely? It doesn't make sense to me that we all can just go about our normal lives and just not shake hands and we'll all be fine. That didn't make sense to me in the beginning. And as we can see, it's not what happened. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I will first of all hope that we have a Democratic governor. And I will hope that, and I will work with that governor, but even if we don't, if we still have Phil Scott, I will work with him to ensure that we are getting the information to the people on the ground in a way that is useful to families. Because while I think there's been good guidance in some ways, some good measures taken in some ways, we often don't think through things as a person from a family, as a low-income person who has to think through their resources in a different way, as a person who can't leave work or who is scared. We don't necessarily think through. While I think our government on both sides of the aisle right now in Vermont are thinking about these issues in the broad spectrum, I also think that you just can't change that until there is people in those elected offices who do think like that, who do think like someone who's, if their resources end, they're in big trouble, who do think, oh, I'm stuck here for 14 days, I only have this much left for food, and I could maybe spread that out if I also go to a food shelf, and then give guidance to someone who maybe lives just above the margin, has now lost their work, doesn't know how to do this, doesn't know about food shelf resources, doesn't know about mutual aid, doesn't know how do we give guidance to people to reach out in terms of that, and maybe have a statewide, I would hope that after this we understand that we need a statewide agency to also have a crisis team that's always there, that has in place systems like the mutual aid that everyone on this call that many on this call have started, that can just snap into effect at the minute something like this happens, so that community members don't feel like they're the ones that have to pick up the pieces. I hope that helps answer for you. Heidi, I think, is who gave that question. So I don't know, are there other questions for folks? We can continue this conversation if there are any questions, but I would love if people do have questions for folks to ask them. I have asked Jacob. Jacob, are you there? Can we see you? Can you make it so we can see you? There he is. I hope he's coming. I hope he's coming to the place where we can see him. Jacob?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Nope, you're gone. There you are. This is Jacob, my field director, and I don't know what. Are there any questions that you saw come through?
I do not see any on Facebook.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's just continue the conversation. I'd love to hear from folks in this event, which I think has been a great event, and I have some ideas about how we should get it out there so that people can watch it who maybe weren't able to right now during this time. But I'd love to hear from each of you, kind of some of your takeaways, and we can continue this discussion for a few more minutes. Let's start with Teddy.
Sure. Well, just one other thing you can push as Lieutenant Governor. Feel free to talk to Bill, David, or Rebecca about repealing Dylan's rule. That would make everyone's lives a whole lot easier. Just putting that plug in there. Yeah, so my key takeaways from this conversation have definitely been twofold. First, it's about people within communities stepping up to take care of their own, which is, I think, necessary all the time, but especially in these times of crisis, and really underscoring what I think Brenda and Tanya had the conversation earlier. We're seeing a system designed to fail. We're seeing a system that for 40, 50, 60 years has been basically a gamble, saying what we're going through now will never happen, and it did. It happened in the 80s, it happened in 2008, 2009, and it's happening again in 2020. And I'm not pro-business by any stretch of the imagination, but we cannot pretend that this isn't going to have an economic impact on all of our lives, also for the foreseeable future. We're going to have small businesses that regardless of how good the bailout is going to be, small businesses are going to fold. People are going to lose their jobs. Communities are going to lose strong leaders because they're going to have to move elsewhere in search of economic opportunity, or they'll become a climate refugee and they'll have to move. So I think the big takeaway for me, both from this call and from the entire experience of COVID-19, whenever this is over, is that we need to establish a system that works for everybody. We need to establish a system that can weather crises, and we need to establish a system that doesn't depend on 100, not quite 100, but at least I think 85 old white men in DC who spend more than half of their time out of their community and in one of the richest cities on earth. We need to create a system that is much more flexible and that can act much more quickly and much more strongly to offset some of the, yes, we're missing weddings. Yes, folks aren't gonna have graduations, but this is going to change our entire way of life. And it is being decided by people whom do not know our way of life. And so that is my big takeaway from this whole experience, is that we need to have big structural change at every level of our government, or nothing's ever going to change. And we're going to be right back here for another disaster in another couple decades. So thank you to everyone who is on the front lines, at the health centers, in their communities, dealing with the most vulnerable. My thoughts are with the assisted care facility up in Burlington, which is now basically the epicenter of this outbreak. And yeah, thank you all so much.
Okay, how about you, Tanya?
I mean, my takeaway from all of this is so similar to what I hear Teddy saying. I mean, we will continue to end up here unless we lift everybody up. We are only as strong as a community and as a society as the most vulnerable members of that society. And we really have to shift away from focusing how we identify success as a society, away from how well the most wealthy are doing and towards how well everyone is doing. We have to stop using measures like GDP in the stock market, because the reality of it is the people who are going to be hurt the most by what's happening right now don't give a crap about the GDP or the stock market, because they're never going to own stocks in their life, and that doesn't have a real bearing on what's going on for them. And I think the biggest way that we shift that and we change that is by bringing those voices to the table to be making transformative policy. I think that when the more different voices and different backgrounds and different experiences we can bring to the table to have like an open discussion, we can build things that no one of us could have ever created by ourselves. But that requires that people use their privilege to step aside and make space for people with less. It requires that people understand that it doesn't have to be them, that other people who are not heard can step up and make these changes. And it requires that we stop asking questions about how, or demanding that the most vulnerable find their way to the table. I hear it all the time where people say, well, if you're not at the table, you don't get a say. Show me someone from that community that has the skills. And they're the wrong questions. The reality is that the most vulnerable communities have some of the most transformative leaders, but we don't make space for them to make it to the table. And so we have to stop saying, where are they, and go looking. And so I think that as I see what's happening right now, and what we're all talking about, we are talking about a point in time where every single one of our systems has stopped, and we're looking at how they have been crumbling and crashing down around us. Because the reality of it is that so many people were already in a position of crisis, and every single day, more and more people end up in that position. And so what this is giving us is a real glimpse into how the majority of people are having to live. And we have to change it. We have to build a society that welcomes everyone and that values every voice and experience if we ever want to have the type of community and functioning world that we talk about. And that does mean that the people who have been holding seats and profiting off of other people's pain and misery need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I second that, Tanya. And I think that there is, like I've said in the beginning, that we've been screaming from the rooftops. The system is crumbling. The system has never worked, but it's definitely crumbling now. And we have just watched it crumble. And we are in the middle of watching it crumble, and we need to make the changes. And we need to elect the leaders that can make those changes. And right now, none of us, we all need to remember that this is happening right now so that we can change it, and that we can change it in general. You know, I think it's extremely important that we are able to carry forward this moment and use it as we're policy making in the future. And before I forget, on the note of what Tanya just said, there will almost definitely, probably within the next 48 hours, be they're not using the word shelter in place, but a mandatory stay home order. And so we are going to put a survey up in the comments that I hope has been created. Has it been created in the forms, Jacob? Just a little nod or?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to put that survey up. Even if the people that were on before are not on right now, we are just going to keep it up. We're going to put it on our Facebook page. We're going to put it in all kinds of places. And what I want to say is that I want a reminder that there are not organizations in lots of areas in our county, in lots of rural areas in our county, in our state. And so I think it's extremely important. I didn't get to talk about this, but it's extremely important that these mutual aid people who are volunteers are safely able to go forward. And so while we are sheltering in place, I think personally, you know, this needs survey is going to ask you about these questions, but I want to see us make sure that volunteers are able to get to people with need, period. And so that's really important to me. And I am going to kick it now to Jubilee, and see what your takeaways are.
Really just want to echo what Teddy and Tanya said. And then also just say, for anyone who's watching this right now, like, you are one of those people, you are one of those change makers. Like, we're just people. I mean, you look at our backgrounds, it's not like we had any amazing education or training. I think, you know, anyone can be a part of this, and everyone should be a part of this kind of stuff. So connect with us, because probably the people who are watching this who aren't already in this work are people who would be really good at this work. And there's groups that will help you, you know, learn how to talk better publicly and all of that kind of stuff. You know, my first times talking publicly, my feet were like planted 3 feet apart and like shaking violently, you know, just to stand up and not fall down. And there was people who supported me through that. And I think really, you know, any one of you can be a leader. It's just having the tools to make you that. And there are lots of tools in our state to help you lead. It's really just reaching out and connecting.
Yeah, so I want to second that, and I want to say that I also, I think a lot of people may not know this. I've done a lot of public speaking and public work before I started doing more political public speaking. I had been doing political work all the way for the last 20 years in different ways. But in terms of public speaking, I did not like to tell my story. So I think people would feel that really surprised by that, because I tell my story all the time now. But I didn't want to tell my story. I would often put a lot of data and facts in when I was trying to give speeches, because I didn't want to be vulnerable in my work at the dance festival. I didn't want my community to know how much I was struggling financially, because I was afraid that then they wouldn't trust me to do this gigantic event that kind of takes over our town for 4 days every summer and takes, you know, a lot of work. I was afraid of that. I was afraid of a lot of things. I was afraid of people really knowing how hard it's been for me and the shame in it. Teddy can tell you that when I first started running for governor, and even through the whole race, facing my poverty was one of the hardest things for me. And there are people that will help you through that. Jubilee will tell you how lonely it was after the race because the people that help you through that were kind of distant because they had to be. And now I've done this much differently for this race because those connections are extremely important. And I want to say that over and over again, Rights and Democracy, I just want to give them a plug because over and over again, Rights and Democracy has given me the opportunity to, and other people, I think 2 of you are wearing Rights and Democracy shirts, have given many of us on this call the opportunity to lead. I am a lead organizer on the overdose crisis cohort that happens nationally, and that is, while I was already leading on that issue, that allows me to have some more resources in the ways that I'm leading on those issues. And so I want people to get involved. If it's not Rights and Democracy, there's other organizations that you can engage with that may give you the opportunity to lead, but community leadership is happening because there are organizations who understand that everyone out there, every one of you is a leader. And this is not happening because Tanya or I get elected, or because one of our gubernatorial candidates gets elected. This is happening, or because Teddy is in city council. This is happening because we stand up together. This is happening because this will happen because people like me, people like Tanya, people like Teddy know that in order for this change to happen, we have to be able to step back from the podium, from the microphone, and allow you to come in and say your piece and lead. And I think that everyone on this call is a leader, and like Jubilee said, is a regular person. And so I want you as a regular person who's maybe never seen yourself that way to understand that right now we need you. You are the leaders we need. So while it'd be great if our government was doing things slightly differently or a lot differently, and maybe there was a better system, we know that you're prepared and ready to do this and take this on, and we want it to be you that does. And so please do reach any of us, and we will help you find a place for you to bring that leadership in. And I'm going to kick this over to Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I agree with all of your sentiments, everything that you all said. And as I sit here and try to think about a nice little neat package of what my takeaway is or what I feel like I can do from here, it keeps coming back to the structural piece for me, which is what you all just spoke to. So I guess there is still a chance, it's a small chance, but it's physically possible that Bernie Sanders still earn enough delegates to become the nominee of the Democratic Party. And I'm scared to death that states are conducting primaries during this pandemic. I was talking to Brenda about this a few days ago. There's this cognitive dissonance where I'm on one hand, people in power are canceling elections in which some of them are up for election, and that's terrifying. But on the other hand, people are going out and voting in a pandemic, which is more terrifying. So I don't know what the answer is on that, but I guess I just want to ask everybody who does care about universal health care, who does care about paid family and medical leave, and who does care about rights for everyone in our society, regardless of their income, gender, identity, or race, that they stay informed on what's going on with the Sanders campaign and just see what you can do. If it's calling up elected leaders in other states and asking them to cancel their primaries, do it. If it's writing to the DNC, do it. Or if it's just volunteering online to phone bank or online canvas, that's my plug. And I totally acknowledge that Brenda and no one here might have that same, or anyone here might not have that same opinion. But that's my takeaway right now is Jesus, we need universal health care.
Well, we need universal health care, and I will say that in Vermont we have it on the books in Act 48, and I think that we need to pay for it, and we need to find a way to do it in this state if it's not going to happen nationally, and I'm very worried that it's not going to happen nationally. And so universal health care, paid family medical leave, better version of unemployment insurance, people in the gig economy, which is a lot of us, having some way, like there is so much we need right now, and that's what I'm taking away from this. We shouldn't be in a place where no matter what, we would have been in a place where somebody maybe needs to be delivering groceries to people, but we maybe would not have been in a place where we could not shut down for a few minutes so that we could keep this from spreading in the first place. So absolutely, I am on that page, and I also am on the page of being terrified about elections. So before I kick it over to Katy, I want to say that the elections in Vermont are being taken care of. So they will find a way for us to vote. They are already well on their way for that. So they will find a way for us to vote and make sure whether it's vote by mail or whatever, but they will not put us at risk in Vermont to vote. So do know that you can vote up to 45 days before an election, and you can vote, or in theory, you can vote at the polls. But I think there is a chance that that is not going to be what we're doing. And I hate to kick it out that long because that causes a lot of anxiety, but it's the reality. And so I want us to just be clear that that's something that we can look forward to and do, is definitely pay attention to your local elections. If you can afford to, donate to candidates that you like, that can change this for us next time here in Vermont. Change happens from the ground up. I think we've heard one famous senator of ours say, not from the top down. And so it is on our city councils and school boards, which for some of us, we can't serve on those because we can't afford to. It is in our state legislature and our senators. It is in our Senate. It is in our statewide offices. And when we start to elect leaders who have faced the problems, real solutions will emerge. And so I want to see us not forget that elections are happening right now. And if you don't have resources, find something else you can do. Make calls. Jacob would probably love for me to tell you that we have phone banks on Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30 to 8 that are right now. We're just checking in with people and telling them about upcoming events. We're checking in with people over 60 and other vulnerable people who might be home to see if they have needs that need to be met, and telling people about events. Eventually, we will be doing calls, which are called persuasion calls, for our campaign. But we're going to do that for a while later. And we also have 3 shifts on Saturdays and Sundays. Again, mostly checking in with people over 60. So if you and telling people about events. I feel like it almost got a glare, but he's hard to read. And so. Please do, that's for us, but there's also other things happening around the state. So while Tanya and I may have somewhat forgotten that there's an election going on because we're doing this work, Jacob regularly tries to bring me back to remind me. And we don't want you to, because in your towns, in your cities, in your areas, it's happening right now, and it will happen through this pandemic, and we have to be ready for it and informed. So now I'm going to kick it to Katy, who's going to tell us what her takeaway from this call is.
My takeaway is just really to thank you guys for hosting platforms like these, because these discussions are so important when we're socially isolating, when we're feeling anxious and stressed out, to have even a virtual connection with people to discuss our fears, to discuss what we hope for the future and how we can plan for a better future is really important. So thank you guys for doing that and for giving us the space to share how we're coping, and for putting those bugs in our ears about where we're headed and things to think about for the future and how we can step up and have a bigger say in what happens in our lives, because this is a scary time. And, some folks, I'm a little scared and saddened when I go out by how cavalier some folks are being about this. They don't realize how serious it is. They go out without their gloves. They're sniffling and touching and standing right next to each other. And
that to me is a sign that things are going to keep spreading and they're going to spread quickly. So by hosting a place where people can share ideas and talk about that and talk about our fears and reconnect with people and think about, again, the voting that you brought up and the structure of our society, these are all really great things that were not even at the forefront of my mind as I was homeschooling this morning. So it's good to that we can all kind of share the wealth of ideas and thoughts that are going on in our heads. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Katie. And maybe in our daily schedules, we can have like 20 minutes for electoral politics or something, if that's what we need to be doing, or organizational politics, whatever it is we need to do to make sure that right now, Ashley is helping us organize a community conversation in her area that we're going to do online with community members, and that's happening in different areas. Like Tanya and I hopefully will get together and do some things when we are done distracting ourselves with helping people, because I think we can't help it. We need to be doing that right now. So hopefully we put that in there, because we are where we are because of the policies that have been made right now. And we would have been in a pandemic anyways, but we are where we are in the crisis we're in economically in our country because of the policy that was made by the people that are elected. And so we have to change that if we want to be in a different place. So we cannot forget, we cannot say this was unavoidable. The pandemic may have been unavoidable, though we could have sheltered in place sooner if we had universal health care. If we had enough tests for a crisis, then maybe those of us who are sick would know we aren't sick, don't have COVID-19 and can help. So we wouldn't just have to be isolating for 14 days. If we had paid family and medical leave, if we had universal health care, if we had better unemployment insurance, if people were making enough money to survive in the first place, then we would not be having an economic crisis right now. We are having not just a global pandemic, but an economic crisis that's going to cost so much more money to solve than it would have cost us to just solve the problems that existed in the first place. I say this all the time, but I want to say it right now. It is less expensive for us to solve the problems with homelessness, for us to solve the problems with people being underpaid, for us to solve the problems with the opioid crisis, the overdose crisis, for us to solve the problems with healthcare, to make a strategic investment and pay up front. We would not be in the position we are in right now, where we're going to have to pay so much more. And so I really want to leave us with this thought. But I'm also going to ask Carrie, before I leave us with this thought, is it possible for us all just to wave at the end to people, or no?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody who's got their camera on, they can unmute themselves, turn their camera on. Yeah, okay. Go for it.
Awesome. So when we're done with this thought. So I want to leave us with this thought. We are coming together as a community. In Vermont, I have seen this over and over again, that we are great in a crisis. We are a really good state in a crisis where our community, regardless of political divides, regardless of what we believe, we stand together, and we do it every time. But we have to remember that that's who we are when we're going forward. We have to remember that this is who we are now, and that there, like folks have said, there are people in crisis in our communities every single day, and we have to carry this part of Vermont, this Vermont strong that we are, into the future, into the next moments. So help people where you can right now. Be with your family. Don't be too hard on yourself. Take care of your kids the best you can. Don't worry if your house is getting messy and the dishes are overflowing. Do what you need to do to take care of yourselves. Do take self-care moments. Tell people you cannot have back-to-back Zoom calls where you don't get a 15-minute break in between for yourself. Make sure that you are enjoying some of these fun online events that are happening all across the world right now, and participate in them. And as we move forward, when you are collected and you are able, fight for changes that will not leave us in this place in the future. Fight for a different outcome for people in our state and across the country and across the world as we move forward. And so I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I want to let you know that you'll see us again on this issue soon. And next week we will be doing a Medicare for All town hall type event. And we'll be inviting some of the same panelists and some new ones for that. And we'll be doing a lot more events going forward. So please stay home, be well, be safe, and please wash your hands like you just did a handstand in cow manure. Thank you all. Everybody wave.
Bye.
Bye.